Lucifer, the fallen angel. That is the video we are going to be watching, done by the Legends of History YouTube channel. This is coming, I think, from a biblical story perspective. So we're just going to take a peek and then unpack it. Alrighty.
Before the biblical God created the world, he first created the heavens, and inside the heavens, he created the cherubs, the angels, and the archangels. The archangels were essentially the highest rank of the angels, and were the chief messengers of God himself. Amongst these archangels was the being known as Lucifer, the highest archangel of all. He was described as being the most beautiful creature that God had ever created, a splendid being that was perfect in every way. Ezekiel 28:15 described Lucifer as, "Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created." But Lucifer was so perfect, so handsome, so divine, and so strong when in comparison to his peers, that he grew arrogant. His superior qualities to God's other creations caused him to become prideful, and pretty soon, he believed that it was he who should be in God's place. He wanted to be God himself, and given that he was deemed worthy to be in the presence of God more than any other, and that he arguably understood God better than any other, Lucifer could think of no one better than himself to be the one to overthrow his Lord. As noted in Isaiah 14:12-14, the prophet Isaiah quotes what some suggest is Lucifer, saying, "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God." It can even be argued that Lucifer's ambition is greater than God's, that not only does he want to take God's place, but wants a place even higher than which God sits. Pride would spur on Lucifer to act on his thoughts, that he was indeed more powerful than God. It was pride in which blinded him, pride which led him down a path of haughtiness, and pride which saw him begin to manipulate the other angels into serving him. After all, his intellect was superior to that of the other angels, and so deceiving them was not beyond his means. While some did remain loyal to God, many of the angels who, like Lucifer, would become known as fallen angels, began to recognize him as the superior being. While Ezekiel 28:15 notes Lucifer as being perfect in every way, he also notes that iniquity was found in him, thus diminishing his perfection. With a third of the angels on side, Lucifer launched an attack on God, and a mighty war for the heavens took place. But Lucifer was not counting on the strong resistance put up by another archangel, the one known as Michael. Unable to defeat Michael in his current form, thus lending Lucifer to doubt his own perfection at this point, Lucifer transforms into a dragon, as noted in Revelation 12:7-8, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. While you might say Lucifer had the courage to rebel in the first place, although many would say this was not courage, and more so blind arrogance, he is ultimately defeated by Archangel Michael. By this, we understand how powerful the biblical God actually is, that Lucifer is defeated without God actually having to get involved in the battle. You might argue that God worked through Michael in order to overcome Lucifer, but in any case, Lucifer's defeat is absolute. Revelation 12:9 goes on to state, "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world, as he was cast out into earth, and his angels were cast out with him." This is also where we see Lucifer referred to by his other namesake Satan, which he earns after he has been defeated. His defeat is more than just a loss of pride though. Lucifer loses everything. He's not only shunned by God, but he is cast out from heaven, along with all the other angels who had sided with him. Gone are his glory days of being the most splendid, perfect being of all of God's creations, and instead, he takes the role of the complete opposite. His fall to earth is described by Luke, who quotes Jesus in 10:18, "I beheld Satan as lightning fell from heaven." Lucifer's ultimate fate is detailed in Revelation 20:10, where it's understood that the devil that deceived them was cast out into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night, forever and ever. It's understood though that Lucifer would not tolerate his sentence quietly. In fact, from the very day of him being cast out, Lucifer began to plot his revenge against God. Seeing as Lucifer was no longer God's favourite creation, Lucifer would target his vengeance against that which took his place, mankind itself. When God created Adam and Eve, he tested them, forbidding them from eating from the tree of knowledge. Seeing an opportunity to scorn God, Lucifer snuck his way into the Garden of Eden, posed as a snake. However, in the early passages of Genesis, which detail the temptation of Eve, the serpent is never explicitly stated as being Lucifer.
Yeah, let's get a pause in here midway. I always find it fascinating how this intricate story has been kind of meshed together over the years, because back in my biblical reading days where I was reading the Bible a lot, I always found very little in the Bible about like Satan and the dynamics of the devil, like as just like a full story about Satan. It's always like meshed together with little parts. Like even some of those scriptures that were shown there were from Revelation. And it was like, and to me, I thought that was like, okay, that's the eternal punishment that will be given. Is that happening only then? Or was that for, is it now, then, here, where? I don't know. It's hard to put all the, like, who put this together? And that maybe that leads me to ask a question like, are there other like maybe non-canonical accepted texts out there where with like a more detailed story about how this all went down, that like maybe some esoteric wisdom that people read over and are like, this, if you really want the gist of it, here's the real story of Satan.
When me and my partner were trying to make some conclusions about what we believed as we were like growing in our religious beliefs, my partner got a hold of a big fat concordance and started like cross-referencing what words meant and everything. And you could do that. You could look at root words of stuff. I'm pretty sure there's probably versions of the Bible, because at one point I get the impression that all the words that hell is used for, there was prior versions of the Bible where they had like Hades was used and different, and sometimes they were descriptors. Like you said, these stories get pieced together, but it's like, there are versions where they're talking about devil. I'm like, are you sure they're not talking about the king of Babylon there? Are you sure they're not talking about like a place? Like an actual place that was a place of torment here on earth? So, but narratives get formed, right? But even despite all that, even if you had some like very narrow, you clumped it all together and you were like, Satan fell from heaven, blah, 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 and that's just that. And he's bad and God's good. Yeah. There's a weird relationship between God and the Satan. Because after all, Satan was allowed to enter into the garden and tempt them. He had enough autonomy to do that, to tempt the people in the garden. Went before God during the times of Job and was like, let me tempt Job. And God was like, okay. Yeah. And even when you think about Jesus, even when Jesus came on the scene and Jesus was like casting out demons and everything, I was thinking about this before we started today in the car, like right before I got in. Weird coincidence. That when Jesus cast the demons out, they were like, please send us into those pigs. Yeah. Or please don't send, like, whatever they did. Yeah. Jesus was like, okay. Yeah. He wasn't like, I'm not going to tell you nothing. Yeah. And of course, even with all that being said, even though that's like staggering evidence enough to make you reframe your opinion about the devil, there are people that I know would be like, they would just recirculate it all around to some dogmatic belief where the devil's just bad. But I believe that there's a symbolic, philosophical way you could take a lot of this stuff, and it might allude to things greater than simple good versus bad notion. You know what I mean? I mean, after all, no matter how you slice it, did God create every being in the universe or not? Yeah. Did God create everything or not? Yes. And you kind of are pigeonholed to go to either going, well, there's some things that exist that God didn't create, or he did. He created, I suppose, evil too.
So maybe you're alluding to the fact that, like, from like biblically or whatever, maybe all of it is kind of like a metaphor or a symbol for the internal battle that goes in the fact that you've got the light and the darkness within yourself that you are
correctamundo. Like, and with any good metaphor, it can be regarded as scaffolding. Yeah. Maybe to get you somewhere, but not something that you have to take with you to eternity. a lot of these stories might have been good and, probably have more profundity than a lot of people can even grasp. But even that being said, you don't have to pound the spike of dogma into the earth and be like, it will never move, and this is how it is forever. You can recontextualize things. You can look backwards and forwards through time and decide what things mean at deeper and deeper levels.
All right, we're going to continue on and finish this up.
In Genesis 3:1, the snake is merely described as being a crafty animal. Therefore, it's likely that the idea that Lucifer is this serpent is merely ascertained by the members of the faith. While it's taught as scripture, it's not necessarily stated in these opening passages. Some may counter this argument though, by saying that Lucifer is referred to as the serpent, most notably in Revelation 12:19, where he is called that old serpent, and perhaps therefore the original serpent. Others argue that Lucifer wasn't the snake itself in the Garden of Eden, but that he manipulated the snake to speak on his behalf. However, again, there is no scripture to actually support this. Furthermore, when we look at the origin of Lucifer's name, we'll find that Lucifer is actually Latin for light bringer or morning star, or even the planet Venus. But how could Latin find its way into a Hebrew manuscript when the manuscript was written before Latin was even a language? Let's take the 14th chapter of Isaiah to analyze this, seeing as, believe it or not, it's the only point in the scripture where the name Lucifer is actually explicitly mentioned. Isaiah 14:12 states, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cast to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation, in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit." Many believe that here, Isaiah is referring to Lucifer the devil, but there is another argument, that this passage is actually in reference to a fallen Babylonian king, one who is mortal, and not one who is created as a divine perfect angel. It's understood that this king had sinned greatly in his persecution of Israel, and likely believed that he was beyond the power and punishment of the biblical God. In this argument, Isaiah in this chapter seeks to explain the king's folly, and not the folly of the archangel Lucifer. In fact, his usage of the term Lucifer isn't universal across all translations. In some versions, Isaiah simply refers to the subject as the morning star, or Halel, the Hebrew word referring to Venus. It implies that the king of Babylon, whose identity is not confirmed in scripture, was once someone considered in high regard, before his downfall, as predicted by Isaiah. But if this is the case, then how did it all become about Lucifer, the fallen angel? Well, that's not exactly known, but we can speculate that early Christian scribes, who were by this time writing in Latin, simply decided for themselves that this would be a great opportunity to fit in a story about a fallen angel. Going by this argument, Isaiah 14:12 was therefore hijacked by these scribes and molded to fit their own narrative about the character Lucifer. By the time of King James I's translations into English, Saint Jerome, who was largely responsible for these translations, would incorporate Lucifer into the final version, and thus the metamorphosis of what was a Babylonian king who'd sinned for his arrogance would instead become Lucifer, the fallen angel of God. It would be interwoven into the biblical account of the fall, and would eventually become canon for some believers. The same can be said for Ezekiel's words in 28:15, where he states, "Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, until iniquity was found there." While there are many who believe that Ezekiel is addressing Lucifer, other accounts indicate that Ezekiel is actually referring to an unnamed mortal king of Tyre. In conclusion to this video, regardless of how you interpret the story of Lucifer, whether as an unnamed Babylonian king or the fallen angel of God, the moral of the tale is quite profound. It echoes the old saying, pride goes before a fall, or in the biblical sense in Proverbs 16:18, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. It serves to show us that, like Lucifer, if we are too confident and believe ourselves to be more powerful than we actually are, we could risk to set ourselves up for our own failure. The tale also seeks to teach us to be modest and to be thankful for what we have, and while we should aspire, we should not rush into things and be impulsive with our desires. It also echoes the idea that we should respect our elders, our parents, and those that paved the way before us, in that in some cases, they know better than we do and hold wisdom that we may not be able to conceive at the time. Lucifer, for example, believed he was stronger than God, and even though God had made him what he was, Lucifer threw it back in his face and went against him because he believed he was better. The result of this, of course, leads to Lucifer's banishment, which shows us that the consequences for such disrespect to those who came before us can and should be severe.
But I mean, God could have like not done that to him. It's like Lucifer did this to God, and then he fell because God did that to him. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like, well, don't go telling the boss this because the boss will fire you. Like that term, pride goes before the fall. People see that as like some warning, like, so don't be arrogant or something. But you ever met somebody that's like the opposite of arrogant? Like they're too humble. You can go the opposite way with anything, correct? Am I rambling here?
No.
The quick point I want to make is, what if you looked at it like this? Thank God pride comes before the fall. Because that's a good way to like get some directionality when you're getting prideful and falling in life. I've never been prideful and fallen. That's pride, sucker. You're about to fall for saying that. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I'm not making sense here.
No. What's your overarching point?
That try some pride out one time. See how limited it is and why it's limited. It's not like limited for no reason.
Yeah.
If you were prideful alone in a jungle,
Well, I'm sure
there's no thing that's going to be like, you deserve a coconut to the head.
I'm sure most people have got some story out there that has humbled them. Like, you know, you created some art piece that your family told you was fantastic and amazing. Then you went to an art show and then you were like instantly humbled by.
That's every contestant that gets made fun of on So You Think You Can Sing or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always somebody that didn't have anybody that had their back.
Yeah.
You know, where the hell? Why did you guys tell me I was good? Well, you were so busy talking about it. You fucking demons. You're the demons that should have warned the guy.
Well,
you know, pride does come before the fall. And it's more than that. It is that if you're too confident, you know, like this is how people can sometimes lose fingers in machinery and stuff. They get too used to the stuff, and then they're like, you know, I worked with it day in, day out. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I got too much.
Yes.
But in an interpersonal thing, it's a little irritating to me that the air of pride can be one that like causes people to like want to take you down. Yeah. What about the guy that's actually doing corrupt stuff, but he's nice? He doesn't have pride though. Like you could reverse engineer this towards some bad means. I can't hear you because you're too arrogant. But well, that makes you a sitting duck for some satanic guy that's learned this lesson a long time ago and's like, you get more bees with honey. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes the arrogant guy's just making a good point and arrogant at the same time.
That's true.
Come on, man. That's just arrogance.
There's a literal nature side of this that, like, I don't know, I get triggered in my skeptical, rational side when I think about it. It's because when you get presented with Satan, it's like he was the smartest and the wisest and the best looking and had everything of the angels. And I was like, and he couldn't figure out that God was more intelligent and smarter and had infinite more power than him.
Oh, Satan!
I was like that. Like I'm like
dumb as hell.
I'm like something doesn't make any sense here. I'm like, why would you try to overthrow the guy that you should be smart enough to understand that you don't have the power, like because you're known as the wisest.
If I was Satan or Loki or any of these guys, I would be like, I turn myself in. There goes your whole book of Revelation, sucker. How are you gonna do it? God would be like, oh, come on, Satan, don't be a jackass. You know, like act it out, because I still have to like fight you again in the book of Revelation and chain you up for 1,000. Nah, I give in. You're right. You're trickstery than even anything, man. So much of a trickster, you're not even a good bad guy. Like, what a dumb shit. You know what I mean? Like, he's dumb as hell. Yeah. Or this is just a fucking story. Yeah. Or this is a story rich with symbology that the wise will extract and spit the bones out of.
Yes. Well, anyway, we'll end it there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our reaction on this one. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone till next time.
Stay spiritual.